My top 20 favorite British monarchs. Part 1, Richard III. So today, guys, I'm going to be talking to you guys about King Richard III of England, who was king from 1483 until 1485. He only reigned for 2 years during the Wars of the Roses. He was actually the last king to be in the Wars of the Roses. Now, by the way, some quick disclaimer. He is my 17th favorite British monarch. There are 20 parts into this. It depends if I'm going to do part 2. If I'm doing part 2, then, yeah. If not, then I'll probably do it some other day. But it depends. So, technically, if you watch my yesterday's video, I ranked my top 20 from worst to best. So, my worst one is John Lackland, who was king from 1199 until his death in 1216. And my best one is George I, who reigned in 1714 until his death in 1727. Now, obviously, don't get me wrong, but where Richard sits, he sits in between my 18th favorite, which is Edward the Fourth, which is his older brother, and 16th, which is Henry VIII. Technically, there are 20 parts into this, so this video is going to be long. So I had to research the life of Richard III, how he became king, when he was born, and how long he reigned for, and how he died. So let's get into it. Richard III, from 1452 until 1485, was the King of England from 1483 until 1485. He was the last king from the House of Plantagenets. This is Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Richard III was King of England and France, and he was Lord of Ireland. He was born... He reigned for 2 years and 57 days. His coronation was on the 6th of July, 1483. And he was born on the 2nd of October, 1452. And he died in Fordray Castle in Northamptonshire. And he died on the 22nd of August, 1485, at the age of 32, in Botsworth Field, Leicestershire. And that's where he was. And his house is the House of York. Richard was part of the House of York during the Wars of the Roses. He was the younger brother of King Edward IV. When Edward IV died, his 12-year-old son became King Edward V. Richard was given the role of protector, meaning he would run the country until Edward V became an adult. However, Edward IV, a well-known womanizer, had entered into a second secret marriage with his children's mother while he was still married to Eleanor Butler, thereby remaining all 7 children illegitimate. The 3 estates and the London City Council began discussions about the evidence brought forth by Bishop Robinson Stillington and concluded that the late king had committed big aim, making his children bastards who were oh god, I'm so sorry, there is a swear word in this, so yeah, who were therefore ineligible to inherit the throne. The crown was presented to the oldest man relative to Edward IV, Richard. The rumor that Richard had ordered the boys to be killed originated in the French court and did not reach England for several months. Richard put down a rebellion in October 1483 by his old friend the Duke of Buckingham, and the strenuous first attempt by Henry Tudor and his French troops to land in England to usurp the throne. Buckingham was beheaded for high treason, treason, and bad weather on the English Channel prevented Henry from landing. Henry Tudor successfully landed in Wales in August 1485. While he did not succeed in attracting men to his cause, the Stanley brothers agreed to bring their sizable private army with him. This led to the Battle of Bosworth Field, in which Richard was betrayed and killed by William Stanley's men. His body was put on public display, nude in Leicester for 3 days before Henry allowed the body to be buried in a quickly dug grave in their priory in Leicester. In 2012, Richard's skeleton was rediscovered beneath a car park where the priory once stood. It was reburied in Leicester Cathedral in March 2015. For many years, Richard III was seen as a villain. The Tudor kings and queens encountered this, as did Shakespeare's famous play Richard III. Almost all writers at the time saw him as either a hero or a villain. In both the past and the present, some writers say that Richard III made many good laws per his parliamentary roles of 1484, such as an accused was innocent until proven guilty, that land and property could not be seized while an accused awaited trial, and abolished nefarious and legal means by which the southern English nobility made money off of the lower classes, which made Richard several enemies. Others argued that he was ruthless, but that this behavior was common for the powerful people of that time. So technically, when Richard became king, well, obviously, we don't know how he actually, his father was Richard Plantagenet, Duke of York, and his mother was Sally Neville, Duchess of York. His signature is Richard, Duke of Gloucester, and what you can see. His issue is Edward of Middleham, which is he was Prince of Wales. He was buried in Leicester, and obviously his predecessor was Edward V, which is his nephew, and his successor was Henry VII, who would be the first Tudor king of England. Now, technically, we have no idea why, what's his name? Who was beheaded? Oh, yeah. By the way, his friend, his old friend, the Duke of Buckingham, he was beheaded for high treason. So technically, I think he was probably helping Richard III to murder his two nephews, who were Edward V, who was king in 1483, but just for only 2 months, and his younger brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester or Duke of York. I think it's Duke of York. I am not sure, or Duke of Gloucester. He was only 9 when, and Richard III decided to murder both of his nephews, and he was killed at the battlefield in 1485 by Henry Tudor, who would now become King Henry VII. Now, technically, I can't find any more information as to why Richard III murdered. Was Richard III a good king? He was not a bad king. Richard's reign was nevertheless disastrous. So technically, we could say we could say that Richard III was kind of a bad king, but we're getting used to it. So yeah, it's technically not a big deal. And yeah, obviously, we don't know why he had to kill his nephews in the Tower of London. Oh yeah, by the way, guys, when he locked them up in the Tower of London, well, Edward V had to be taken to the Tower of London because technically he wanted to have his coronation there. When Richard had his coronation in 1483, on the 6th of July, by the way, for 2 months, right, he was in the Tower of London for 2 months, and he was only king for I'm talking about Edward V, not Richard III. He was only king for 2 years, from 1483 until 1485. Now, obviously, he was only 32, but that's actually the last king to be killed in a battle. There is a lot of previous kings who have been killed during a battle. Now, to make sure this is clear, I think history with History Tea Time with Lindsay Holiday. She actually talks about the many kings and queens of England. She talks about the Wars of the Roses. Also, History Calling does talk about the Wars of the Roses as well. And I saw this video about a 140-year-old woman who survived the Wars of the Roses and threw out King Henry VIII. She was probably born sometime around 1464 and died in 1604, either at the ages of 140 or 162. It depends. I know I couldn't find any more information to Richard III, but all we know is that he is kind of a bad king, but would say, and I have to rate the kings and queens at the end of each of my videos. For Richard III, I might probably say a 7 out of 10, because he did have an old friend called, the Duke of Buckingham, but he was beheaded for a high treason. He actually executed his older brother, which was George, Duke of Clarence, who was executed on the 18th of February, 1748. He was actually drowned in some wine. And he also was accused of murder because he murdered his 2 nephews in the Tower of London, also known as the Princes in the Tower, who were Edward V and Richard. But I don't know why he had to murder his nephews. And he was actually the younger brother of Edward IV, who died in 1483, like we said. But yeah. Yeah, guys, please like and subscribe. So, I'll see you guys in part 2, by the way.